Tremendous here. Got another battle report here for you. This is game 2 of 3 of a local game store tournament that I attended about a week ago now. This is a 2,300 point battle because we're getting ready for the Lone Wolf that's coming up at the end of April. But it is I, Lord Tremendous of the Ogres, versus Big Tom of the Empire of Dust. He paints a lot of my stuff. He's painted some of the ogres in this one, and he's also painting a bunch of my models for my Varangard army. My wife is painting some too, but she doesn't play, so I'll never have a game against Elizabeth, which is sad. But this is against Big Tom. This is an excellent game. It's the first time I've ever faced off against the Empire of Dust, or anything Undead for that matter. So it's a learning experience, to say the least. This game blows my mind. I won't even lie to you. And it's an excellent, excellent fight. So sit back, relax, and get ready to see how it goes. Real quick, I've got a shout out to Dan, who's currently trying to dodge ever playing me in KOW by going to the hospital, which I find offensive and wrong. It won't work. Modern medicine is going to force a game upon you where you will have to face me, sir. But while you're over there faking your injury, I'm going to go ahead and dedicate this report to you. And get better soon, buddy, because it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And for everybody who's not Dan that's watching this, if you don't mind rolling a dice in his honor, I'd appreciate it. You know, he could probably use some more 6s in his life right now, less 1s, unless it's for nerve. But you know how that goes. Anyway, just feel better, buddy. Get better soon. Here's my list, which hasn't changed at all from the last game, because that would be cheating. I have a captain with a 2-handed weapon and a heavy crossbow, an army standard with a healing charm, a naked army standard, and 2 red goblin bigots, both on flea bags. I also brought along a giant, because who doesn't want a giant in their army? I have a chariot regiment, which I'm loving because it has the crystal of retribution on it. I have a naked chariot regiment, and then I have a unit of red goblin scouts, just in troop formation. And then I have my shooter horde with Blessing of the Gods, which might be my most dangerous unit on the table. Finally, I have 2 warrior hordes, both with 2-handed weapons, because I gave up on defense. Unless it's 6, I just don't care. And 2 units of Siegebreaker hordes, because they're amazing. That's going to do it for my list. I'm going to post my opponent's list, play some music. Feel free to pause it whenever you like. See what you turn. The scenario for this game was dominate. At the end of the game, add up the unit strength of all of your units that have the majority of their footprint within 12 inches of the center of the playing area. That is your victory point score. Your opponent does the same, and you compare scores. So basically, it's king of the hill. Getting in the middle of the board with as much of your army as you can by turn 6 or 7. It's interesting. It definitely changes up how you're going to play the game. But yeah, that's what we rolled for, and we're just straight out of COK 18. Here's deployment, and this is the first time I've ever run into Undead. So what did I naturally do? I shifted into my old Warhammer Fantasy 9th Age mentality, and I'm thinking, alright, I've got these guys. I'm going to be able to outmaneuver them. I've got a higher speed than them. They can't march. They probably got shambling. I'm going to go right up to them, and I'm going to punch them right in their ding-ding. I got this all day. So I wasn't worried. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a fun but easy match. I knew nothing about Undead. nothing. So this is a kick in the teeth learning game for me. And it just so happens to be round 2 of a tournament. So yeah, I throw everything right across the middle because I'm like, bring it on. I got nothing to worry about from your stuff. I'm thinking that his stuff is going to be weak. It's going to be regenerated real easy. Like he's probably got a lot of heal spells. And as long as I concentrate my fire, I've got him. Oh, the bliss of ignorance. Anyway, so left to right there, I got a unit of siege breakers. I got another unit of warriors right next to them. Next to them is my scouts, and behind them is a unit of warriors to back up whatever they bait out. I've got an army standard in between there in the corner, just to try to give out inspiring to everybody, just in case he gets lucky. Then I've got my Crystal of Retribution chariots dead in the center. I'm going to try to pull out that big unit, or, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could get that big monster thing to crash into them. I've got a Red Goblin Bigot next to them to try to pull stuff out if I need to. There's my captain and my shooters inside the forest just to give them some cover just in case. And on the right side there, I've got my naked chariots, I've got my other unit of siege breakers, and I believe my army standard with them. The idea there is to deal with his flank and then swoop around and get into the middle by turn 6 to capitalize with points with whatever survives. Really piss poor plan going in this game, but I knew nothing about the Empire of Dust, and so yeah, I worked with what I had. Here's top of 1 after movement, and I did not get to go first. My opponent comes forward, and it was exactly what I expected. They were slow, most of them couldn't march. He's got one ally from the Force of Abyss on the left side there, his Tortured Souls. They come around to flank me a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, bring it on. None of this concerned me whatsoever. Like I said, everything comes up pretty conservative because I can't really march, and I'm totally fine with that. And real quick, I probably should have mentioned this in deployment. You see that little marker in the dead center of the table? That's the center of the table. That's what you have to be majority within 12 inches of in order to score points. So, yeah, that'll change to a token a little bit later. I'll try to point it out if I remember. That's it for his movement, though. Nothing else happens in his turn because he's baiting me like a champion. And so here's bottom of 1 after movement where I take the bait. So here's how clever I think I am, right? Talk about the arrogance of ignorance. On the left flank there, I bring my siege breakers over to look at the Tortured Souls. I figure I've got big shield, defense 6 in the front. Bring it on. Charge me all you want. I'm going to countercharge and beat you to death. Behind him, I've got the unit of warriors that are going to try to back up charge him. I'm trying to bait him forward so I can double charge, right? So I'm all excited about it. In the middle, I've got my Red Goblin Scouts and my Retribution Chariots, as well as my Bigot coming out. I'm trying to bait him forward. I don't really care what he charges. I'm hoping he goes after the Red Goblin Scouts and the Bigot. That way I can get maybe 1 round of attacks out of my Chariot unit before they're blown up in combat, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I've got the unit of a second unit of warriors behind the Red Goblin Scouts, ready to countercharge whatever kills them next turn. Shooters and captain obviously stay still in the forest. They're going to shoot at whatever they want. And then on the right flank, everything moves up about 6 inches, daring his trolls and stuff like that to come after me, with the exception of my second Red Goblin Bigot, who shoots across the table 20 inches and gets to the flank well out of the forward charge arc of his zombie trolls. The idea there was to go after his catapult that's sitting on top of that hill, which I think is beautiful. I was so proud of myself here. Yeah. Those of you that know about Empire of Dust are currently laughing, and that's okay. That's okay. That's it for movement. In the pansy phase, my shooters take aim at the revenants across the way from him and put 3 wounds on the unit. I don't expect those wounds to stay. I have no doubt he's got regen or some sort of healing spell in order to fix them, but I've got nothing else to shoot at, so I figured why not. And then my Bigot that only went 10 inches shoots at one of his characters that are just standing out there, needing 6s, I believe, to hit, 5s or 6s to hit. And I actually slip a wound through. I'm rolling hot, so that's excellent. Again, I'm not expecting that wound to stick, but it's just fun to shoot at his characters. We go in the top of 2, and here's where my education starts. So on the left flank there, his Tortured Souls charge into my Siege Breakers, and I'm totally fine with that. I figured they can take that charge, and now both my Warriors and my Siege Breakers should be able to countercharge. It's going to be glorious. He brings the rest of his stuff up into the center, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, he just wants me to charge him. deal. I don't fully understand what he's hoping to do here, but I'm going to put as much pain into him as I possibly can. This is going to be a lot of fun. Excuse me. And then on the right flank there, his zombie trolls turn to face my bigot on a flea bag, and I'm confused about that. I'm like, I'm not gonna be standing there next turn. But honestly, I thought my opponent made a mistake. I really wasn't sure what he was doing. I didn't know about Surge. I didn't know that Surge allowed you to charge, and so yeah, like I said, this is where my education begins. So right off the bat, he fires a spell off at my chariots with the Retribution Crystal, because he knows it's there, and he does 3 wounds to him, which sucks. I really don't want him to shoot him off the table, but I have hope. And then I get my first lesson in Surge. He surges this unit forward, his Legion unit, into my Red Goblins, and the first one, he only goes forward a couple of inches. I'm like, oh, okay, that's not so bad. And then he surges him again and slams him into the unit. I'm like, you can surge them multiple times and they can charge? He goes, yep. And he shows me in the book, and I'm like, oh no. I believe I told him at this point, wow, this is going to be a short battle report, and I'm going to eat a lot of crow, but it's going to be a lot of fun, so yeah, light bulb! He continues to surge this Revenant unit into the flank of my Siege Breakers that took the shot from the Tortured Souls. Now I'm not too thrilled about that anymore. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to lose my Siege Breakers. This is so bad. Remember before when I couldn't understand why he tilted, or why he changed direction of his zombie troll horde there to look at my Red Goblin Bigot? Now it makes sense. He surges them into the Red Goblin Bigot, who is like an inch away, and nail him no problem. Oh my god. And then he surges another unit of Reverence into my Red Goblin Bigot. It was just what he hit first. He wanted to hit the chariots, but he actually hit the Red Goblin Bigot first. And since he's an individual, he had to turn to face him, or turn to form up against him. So either way, he's going to hit the chariots. God, this hurts. We jump into combat, and oh, sweet lord, I get stupid lucky over here. Ridiculous lucky. He rolls like butt. His Tortured Souls and his double their attacks unit of Revenants only do 6 wounds to my Siege Breakers. I get ridiculously lucky. He rolled so bad, I actually felt bad for him. They bounce off, and I'm like, alright, I've got a chance over here. I figure my Siege Breakers can hit the Tortured Souls, my Warriors can hit the Revenants, and maybe I can capitalize on this lucky break. It happens again over here. His Zombie Legion beats the crap out of my Red Goblin Scouts, doing 6 wounds to them only. I really expected him to do a lot more. Now, don't get me wrong, zombies aren't the best fighters in the world, which I expected, but with the amount of attacks that he had, he should have done a lot more wounds than this. And again, the Dice Gods really have my back. 6 wounds was enough to deal with the Red Goblin Scouts, though, and they rout no problem. As you can see, they are on their way home, which, after running into a legion of zombies, I totally understand. In the combat against the Red Goblin Bigot, the the little regiment or troop or whatever they are of Revenants do 5 wounds to him, and with a 9/11, he's probably not long for this world. And my Bigot routs. It wasn't even close. Yeah, painful. Painful how outplayed I just was. He then comes forward, d6 inches, he only had to go 1, and slams into the flank of my chariots. This is an incredibly well-orchestrated attack by my opponent. I'd be upset if I wasn't so impressed. The Dice Gods kick back into gear for me, though, and even though it's a flank and he's got double his attacks, he only does 3 more wounds to the unit, which gives them a slight chance to not rout right now, which I really don't want them to do. And I kind of get my wish. Instead of being routed, they're wavered, which means they're not going anywhere next turn, but I don't really need that unit to go anywhere. I need them to get routed in combat. So I'm okay with this. I really, really am. Thank you, Dice Gods. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but please don't kill me because of it. This is actually brutal. I called 911 to report a domestic disturbance because these trolls do 11 wounds to my poor Red Goblin Bigot, which is just rude. It does not pay to be a red goblin in my army for this game. The undead must have a taste for him because he literally explodes and falls over. Not even a route check, he's just straight dead. The trolls change their facing like so and lick the greasy bits of red goblin off their claws. Holy crap. So here's bottom of 2, if you can believe it. We're only in the bottom of the second turn, and I am on the back foot. I am so off balance, I don't know how I'm not on my back right now. So I do what I know. I'm playing Ogres. I charge. On the left side there, the Siegebreakers slam into the Tortured Souls. My Warriors slam into the flank of the Revenants. In the front there, or in the middle anyway, the Warriors, the other unit of Warriors slams into the Legion of Zombies that took out my Red Goblin Scouts. My wavered unit of Chariots with the Retribution Crystal, I gamble. I give up a flank to his monster, and I'm hoping that he can't resist that, because it's a juicy charge. I turn to face his Revenants, because I figure they're coming back in, but I want to try to bait in his character too, because I can't charge, I can't do anything, so all I can do is, dump barbecue sauce all over the guys and hope to God my opponent can't resist the temptation. My shooters and my captain stay put, and on the right flank there, the giant moves up to block the trolls' charge, and I'll get to that in a minute. My chariots charge the wraiths that are behind the impassable terrain there, and my other unit of Siegebreakers move up to try to support that charge in any way they can. That's all I have for movement. During the Pansy phase, my Army Standard with the Healing Charm takes 3 wounds off my Siegebreakers, which is vital, because I need every unit I have left on the table right now. And then my shooters take aim at his big scary monster thing, an undead worm or whatever, and do 7 wounds to it, which is huge. It's not going to take him off the table by itself, but if he does charge into my chariots, it's going to put a lot of extra wounds on him, and I might be able to finish him off. That was huge. My shooters, it's like they knew I needed them to do well and actually aimed. I'm really happy with that unit. So, yeah, it's like my entire army suddenly knew that we needed to reach down deep and kick some ass. My Siegebreakers in combat go after his Tortured Souls and do 15 wounds to him. 15 wounds. They only have 18 attacks. Now, I need to caveat this with saying that an individual that was at the store, he hasn't been up in a while, but he was one of my best rivals back when in my Warhammer Fantasy days, and my dice recognized him, and they rose to the occasion to impress him. So I put all my good dice rolling on his presence. Thank you, Dominar. I will always remember this. Anyway, 15 wounds proves to be too much for the Tortured Souls, and they rout. I change facing with the Siegebreakers to look towards the middle of the board, and I start to feel like there might be some hope. So my Warriors, not to be outdone, and doubling their attacks to 36 because I'm in a flank, do 14 wounds to the Revenants. That was awesome. I fully expected that. Getting those guys into the flank of anything is usually pretty devastating, and now that I put two-handed weapons on them, with Crushing Strength 2, they're just meat grinders. Just like the Tortured Souls, the Revenants pop, and I change facing with the Warriors to face towards the middle, because I gotta deal with that Legion of Zombies, and everything else that's still barreling down my center. Keeping with my dice, desperately trying to impress the Dominar, my 18 attacks from my Warriors into the Zombies do 11 wounds. No, it's not going to be enough to break a Legion, but 11 wounds is a triumphant start. I was so happy with my units. Like I said, there was no way they were going to bounce off from that, or they were going to rout from that, not even waver, so I bounce off an inch, but like I said, 11 wounds is an amazing start. I start to run out of a little steam over here. My chariots go ahead and only do 3 wounds to the wraiths. And in fairness, they're incorporeal, it's hard to hit anything that doesn't have any mass, but we were able to scratch up their chains, I guess, for 3 solid wounds. Lackluster given the performance of the rest of the army, but hey, you know what? Who am I to complain? I just had an awesome combat phase. The Wraiths laugh it off, the Chariots bounce off an inch, and they're going to probably pay for that next turn. So, coming off that amazing combat phase, here's top of 3 after movement, and it happens. Oh, thank all the glory. It happens. He sends his character on that crazy-ass worm and the revenants into my retribution chariots. He knows the crystal's on there. He might have forgotten, but I did tell him in the beginning of the game where it was, and he pointed at it and he knew. So he went and he took the bait. That's glorious. His legion goes into my warriors, and that was inevitable. And on the right flank there, his rays slam into my chariots. He wanted to send his trolls into my chariots as well, but honestly, I don't believe that my giant was an inch away from him. I think I was too close to him, because when he tried to pivot to turn to face the chariots in order to charge them, he couldn't end his pivot off of my giant, which means I was probably too close. I thought at the time that made the charge impossible. I had not heard or even knew about the corkscrew maneuver. So while he could draw a line of sight from his center into my chariots, while he could get them and stuff like that, I don't know if they were in his forward arc, but I'm not really sure if that would have even mattered. He wanted to charge his trolls into my chariots, and it just didn't happen. We wouldn't allow it because he couldn't pivot. He couldn't end his pivot of his trolls off of my giant. Turns out that per the math and everything like that, it should have been allowed. So we've already talked it over. It probably wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game too much, but it is what it is. And I wanted to point it out here just so that there's that full disclosure thing, because I'm all about honest reporting. In the Pansy phase, he sends the Revenants with Surge into my Siege Breakers, and I get it. I get it. Now I'm kind of expecting it. That move, that spell making Undead so incredibly agile is genius. It really makes the army competitive. Their greatest weakness is now one of their greatest strengths, provided you can't get a hold of their characters. His other caster heals the unit of zombies for a couple of points. Not a huge big deal, but it went from 11 to 9. So at this point, with every wound counting, this probably is actually a bigger deal than I'm making it out to be. One of his other casters casts heal on the unit as well, healing 2 more wounds off him, bring him down from 11 to 7. And then his last caster hits my chariot unit with Alchemist's Curse, doing 2 wounds to him. So they're in combat, I ain't got to worry about a nerve check, but that's gonna suck, because that's 2 more wounds close to the routing after whatever these wraiths do. Then we dive into combat, and the first thing that happens is the Revenants aren't able to get through the defense 6 of my Siege Breakers and bounce off without doing a single wound. Thank you so much, Dominar, for being there and inspiring my dice while intimidating my opponents. Wow, am I getting lucky. The Legion into my warriors in the center there are able to do 7 wounds to them, which honestly isn't surprising at all. That it hurts a little bit, but it's not surprising. They end up being okay, though. He bounces off an inch, and next turn I'm going to get to countercharge, so there is hope. Their life leech, I think, brings them down to 5 wounds, though. The combat over here is as brutal as you expect. They beat the ever-loving crap out of my chariots, and that's exactly what I wanted them to do. The 20 attacks from his guy on a worm, plus the attacks from the Revenants, who we rolled out of a box for, 6, 12, 16 wounds on top of the 6 they were already carrying. This unit is FUBAR. And then the crystal detonates. Oh, baby. 6 more wounds get done to his worm. 7 more wounds get done to the Revenants. So his Revenant King on an Undead Worm has what, like 11 wounds on him, 12 wounds, 13 wounds, something ridiculous. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy with that unit. Oh, it's the most fun I've ever had getting my ass kicked. The Worm King backs up like an inch or 2, and the Revenants just turn to face the shooters, and that's how it ends. Oh, you can see the smoke coming off them. It's beautiful. The race get a little pissed off about the explosion and beat the piss out of my other unit of chariots, doing 8 wounds to him, which was frighteningly painful. The chariots rout, and the wraiths just come forward like an inch. I think it comes forward d6 inches and rolls like an inch, but you'll see why in a little bit. The zombie trolls, which apparently are the most evil undead thing you could possibly bring in a game, do 10 wounds to my poor giant that just was trying to protect the chariots that he really shouldn't have tried to protect. And even with the inspiring reroll, my giant has had enough. He saw what happened to the chariot, he saw what happened to the bigot, he did not like the fact that he could see his diaphragm, and he skedaddled. He is gone, routed like a punk ass. So that takes us to bottom of 3 after movement, and while this game could go either way, it's a lot closer than I expected it to be after the second turn. Left to right, my Siege Breakers countercharge into the Revenants that bounced off of them last turn. My unit of Warriors helps out my other unit of Warriors, and with the Legion there, my Captain and my Siege Breakers stay perfectly still. On the left side there, on the left side there, my Army Standard with the Healing Charm moves up to try to heal the warriors that took some damage last turn, and my other unit of Siege Breakers on the right flank there go after the trolls because, honestly, they have nothing else to lose. That is it for my movement. We jump into the pansy phase, and my shooters open up on his undead worm, doing 5 wounds to it. I mean, it's huge. I can see over just about everything in order to hit it, and I'm height 2, so I'm not overly concerned. He doesn't get any cover, and I'm able to do some decent damage to him. I'm trying to rout him this turn. The captain joins in on the fun and actually does a single wound to him as well, which, hey, thanks for your contribution. My Army Standard used the Healing Charm on the Warriors, only healing a single wound off of them, which is better than nothing. Who am I to complain? At the end of the shooting phase, we do the nerve check, and his worm routs. Gone. Oh my god, I was so happy because I had no other answer for that thing at all. If it didn't go down that turn, my shooters and my captain were dead. I knew it. He knew it. Oh, I was so happy to see that thing go. And yeah, it returns to dust. We jump into combat, and my Ogres just unleash the fury. My Siege Breakers and the Revenants that bounced off of them last turn do 8 solid wounds to the unit, which is exactly what I expect from this unit. I was very pleased to see it. But they're unfazed by it, and I bounce off. They may have limp wrists, but they also have spines of steel. So this is going to be a fight. This combat, though, sweet mother of all that's holy. These two units with 36 attacks between them with two-handed weapons and all the hate and anger I could channel into them do 22 wounds to his Legion. 22 wounds. Oh, I was ecstatic. The Legion bursts and is routed and is gone forever. The warriors on the left side, they go forward about 4 or 5 inches. My other unit of warriors that are wounded, they just turn to face the side there. And yeah, I don't know exactly how this turned around for me, but I'm thrilled that it did. In this combat over here, I also forgot to mention that my Army Standard joined the Siege Breakers in this charge. I do 13 wounds to this unit of trolls. I was really impressed with that. It was mostly the Siege Breakers. I think maybe the Army Standard did 1. But still, 13 wounds, that's nothing to be upset about. I do not roll high enough to so much as rout them. I don't believe it's possible to waver these guys. And I bounce off, so I'm in a little bit of trouble next turn. I don't know how well these guys are going to do against the trolls, especially with the Wraiths flank charging me next turn. So here's top of 4 after movement, and the Revenants countercharge the Siege Breakers on the left flank there. The other Revenants move up to the Warriors just to get real close to them. They're probably just going to get surged in anyway, so it is what it is. The Wraiths, he threw me off with this one. He moves them over and then 90-degree pivots them to look at the rear of my Siege Breakers. And I'm like, why is he doing that? What's the point of that? Then he moved his character. I'm like, oh my god, he just rear charged me. The Trolls are countercharging the Siege Breakers, making my Army Standard back off an inch. Oh my god, my opponent is good with these guys. So, yeah, I already know what's going to happen to my Siege Breakers, and it's not sexy. That's it for his movement, though. As promised during the pansy phase, he surges that unit directly into the rear. What was a flank charge is now a rear charge, which is so much worse, into my siege breakers. This was beautifully played. Oh, it hurt my pride. Undead are amazing. Then he surges his other unit of revenants into my hurt unit of warriors, which is a great move. I have got no complaints about that at all. In fact, with 6 wounds already on him, if he can roll well enough, they'll probably rout. This little Lich King heals a couple of wounds off of these revenants, bringing them from 8 to 6. And then this psychopath hits my other unit of warriors with something doing 3 wounds to them, the warriors on the left side there. I can't remember what spell he used, but it was like 3 wounds onto my warriors, which doesn't even phase them. We jump into combat, and my opponent is able to do 3 more wounds to this unit of Siege Breakers, which is 3 better than he did last time. My Siege Breakers are able to deal with that no problem at all, and his Revenants bounce off an inch. The Revenants against my Warriors in the center, however, do 6 wounds to him, bringing me up to a total of 12, which would have broke them. The first roll he had routed them 6 different ways. As you can see, my Army Standard's right behind him. He re-rolled it and rolled Snake Eyes. My Warriors stick. Holy crap. Had that not happened, those Revenants would have had free reign throughout the rest of my army. I would have had nothing in position to really deal with them. I mean, yeah, maybe my shooters, but oh, did that just buy me a lot of points. But, yeah, that's where my good fortune kind of runs out. 24 wounds are done between the trolls and the rear flanking race into my poor siege breakers. 24 wounds. That might be the most wounds I've ever seen put on a unit in a single round of combat. Holy shit. That unit is eviscerated, destroyed, murdered, pulped, juiced, whatever you want to call it. They are routed and dead. Yes, he did roll twice, and he didn't roll Snake Eyes once. The trolls turned to face the Army Standard, the race turned to face the center of the table. My right flank is screwed. This brings us to bottom of 4 after movement, and I do what I can. On the left flank there, my Siege Breakers charge in, or countercharge into the Revenants. The Warriors in the center countercharge into the unit that Snake Eyes on him last turn. My other unit of Warriors charges into one of his Lich Kings, just trying to take his characters out of the action now. And because I got nothing else going on, I send my Army Standard into his Trolls. They got 13 wounds, more like 9 now or whatever it is. But send him in, because it's like, hey, maybe he can do a wound or 2 and rout him. Maybe, you know, lightning will strike twice. We'll see. And I got nothing else to do with my Army Standard. He ain't getting out of this. So he might as well go down fighting. And that is pretty much it for my movement. In the Pansy phase, my Army Standard with the Healing Charm takes 1 wound off of the Siege Breakers over here, and I decided to heal them other than the Warriors because the Warriors are on borrowed time. If something coughs at them, they're going to die. At least the Siege Breakers have a chance. So 1 wound, better than nothing. My shooters take careful aim at that little bastard infantry individual over there and fire at him, and I'm only able to do a single wound to him. He's just so agile, it's crazy. And then we jump into combat. I'm able to do 10 wounds to this unit of Revenants, bringing it up to a total of 14, I believe. Because, you know, with heals and everything like that. So that's not terrible. That should be enough, right? It was. It really was. And the unit routs, and I pumped forward D6 inches. I think I end up going 5 or 6. I end up right up there. I was hoping to get closer to the center because it's coming right down to it, and I'm really not overly concerned about his characters. But we'll see how that goes. In this one, my Warriors put 6 wounds on this Lich King over here. These guys are a lot more difficult to deal with than I realized. For almost 200 points each, they absolutely should be. I have no problem with these characters whatsoever. But they can really take a hit. 6 wounds done to this guy, and his nerve test is no joke. I ring his bell pretty good. He's wavered, but he is far from crumbling and routed. So I bounce off an inch, and we'll see what happens. Apparently getting their jaws broken is motivating to these warriors because they do 11 wounds to these Revenants who already had 3 on them, bring them to about 14 total. Yeah, the Revenants call it quits and they rout, and I change facing to face his other character right there, either to, you know, conveniently charge him or at least stay in the center where I can get points for the warriors. And in this combat over here, the Army Standard is able to slice off a single wound on the zombie trolls. Somehow, I just don't think that's going to cut it. I was right. The army standard bounces off, looks at the trolls, and starts trying to convince them that he's not worth countercharging. I don't think they're going to listen. Here's top of 5 after movement, and it's coming down to the wire now. Not much. His trolls countercharge my army standing on the right flank, which is totally acceptable, and then his race start making their way towards my warriors in the center. He's going to try to surge him into him. I realize that after I see him move, I'm like, oh, crap. Honestly, I thought his race were going to go after my shooters, but he decided to go after the warriors, trying to get that flank and finish off the unit, which is probably a smarter move. His characters move around to try to help facilitate that. The one's on the left flank, the one that's wavered, backs up trying to get onto my charge arc, and he can't. The other one is perfectly safe where he's at and is going to try to beat the hell out of my unit with 5 wounds and either route it off the table or at least make life more difficult for it. But that's really it for his movement. In the pansy phase, the little character in front of my siege breakers does a couple of wounds to my unit, bringing them up to a total of 7, I believe. And then his 2 characters surge his unit a race forward, but as you can see, they're a few inches short of running into my warriors, which buys me a turn to try to deal with them. We jump into combat, and his psychotic undead trolls do 12 wounds to my army standard. Basically, they rip the standard off his shoulders and peg him to the ground with it. He dies a horrific death, and my right flank is completely destroyed. Damn, those trolls are rough. They change their facing like so, and they're going to try to get back into this game before the end of it. That brings us over here to bottom of 5 after movement, and no guts, no glory. My warriors charge one of his characters in the center. My other warriors on the left flank there charge that wavered character. I'm going to try to kill them off. And then my shooters and my captain, although they've been doing great at shooting, I double my attacks in the flank of his wraiths. And after what they did to the chariots, I'm not stupid enough to think that I'm just going to be able to shoot them off the table. So I send both units into the flank, hoping, against hope, that it'll be enough to rout them. Other than that, everything else I have is dead, so that's it for my movement. In the magic phase, my army standard with the healing charm takes 2 wounds off of the unit of warriors that had 12 on them before, bringing them down to 10, which is nice. And then we dive into combat. I do 7 wounds to this guy who already had 5 or 6 on him from before, which should be enough to rout him, I would hope, at this point. And it is. My warriors rout that little bastard, and then I change their facing to look at the center of the table, because next turn I gotta get him as close to the center as possible so I can get points for him. These warriors are on a friggin' roll and do 13 wounds to this little bastard. That should be enough to rout him, I would think. It was, and then we go into this combat over here. My warriors, as you can see in the top, sorry I didn't get a picture, but the warriors on the top there, they change their facing to look up towards where the trolls are going to be coming around that rock, and then we go into this combat down here with the shooters and the captain. And the shooters and the captain are both hindered because they had to go through the forest, so they're not great at combat to begin with, but they're still able to do 10 solid wounds to these wraiths. Not what I was hoping to see, but probably more than I would have got had I just shot at them. But it was enough. I rolled like a 10 or an 11, and they routed. They were gone, and I was stunned. So I fired both of them forward D6 inches, and they end up right where they're at. I might actually be able to get points for both of these units now. With that over, here's top of 6 after movement, and there's not much. His unit of trolls kind of come forward as far as they can. They're shambling, so they're not going to move all that fast. His character falls back behind the impassable terrain. The other character stays in the forest because he's perfectly fine, and that's really it for movement. During his pansy phase, he fires off some sort of spell at some sort of damaging spell at my siege breakers in their rear, does a couple of wounds to them, isn't able to rout them. He's able to waver them, though, so they're not going to be moving anywhere next turn. We go into the bottom of 6. His trolls did surge forward a little bit, but they weren't able to get anywhere close to the 12-inch range of the center. I did send my warriors in there, but at that point, he's like, you know what, it's over. I can't get any points. There's no point in going any further. You're going to get everything within 12, the majority of everything within 12. So in the end, yeah, both warriors, both the siege breaker shooters, captain, army standard, and he's got nothing within 12 inches. So there it is. There's the end of the game, and what a crazy up and and down this was. The dice gods really had my back. I got stupid lucky in a lot of situations, and in the end, it worked out for me, and I was able to beat the undead. And I feel happy about that. I don't know if I'll ever get anything painted by Big Tom again, because he probably hates me, but I'm kidding. We were laughing about the whole thing. It was a good game. But you know what? We'll get to the recap right away, because this game is over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So in the end, this was a victory for Lord Tremendous. I ended up getting 1,150 points out of my opponent. He got 0 out of me because I dominated the middle of the field. Yeah, I'm a dick. I ended up getting victory points for 1 Siegebreaker Horde, 2 Warrior Hordes, my Shooter Horde, my Captain, and my Army Standard with the Healing Charm. Just worked out in the end, it really did. Right up front and honest, I really didn't think that his Troll Horde could charge my chariots due to where my Giant was and everything like that. I was unaware of the corkscrew maneuver at the time. But honestly, all in all, I don't think it would have changed anything. Maybe my Giant would have survived a little bit longer. That would have been about it. My warrior surviving the snakes, surviving on Snake Eyes was game-changing, really was. It really solidified my victory. And my shooters were absolutely phenomenal this game, putting wounds everywhere, finishing off the Great Worm, and then that rear charge into the race and taking them out. Not to mention adding all those extra points in the end. I don't know how I'll ever play without them. Surge and very agile, very mobile undead scared the hell out of me. I was unprepared as hell for that. If it hadn't been for the dice gods being on my side, this would have been a much shorter, much more one-sided game in favor of my opponent. I was totally unprepared for it, and it blew my mind, and I think it's genius. I love the way the Empire Dust plays in Kings of War. I really do. Thank you, Dice Gods, for having my back in this game. I credit that to Dominar. Thank you for being there to inspire my dice. And with crazy luck and a great Crystal of Retribution explosion, I really feel that that's what won me this game. All in all, though, this was an unbelievably fun game against an unbelievably fun opponent. The man's models are beautiful. He paints my stuff. I throw money at him to do it. I don't care. He's a great artist. And I'm very much looking forward to the rematch. I'm 2-0 going into Game 3, which means I'm probably going to get my ass kicked next round. But I'm going to ride this good luck train all the way to the end and see where it takes me. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, guys and gals, that's going to do it for this one. Battle Report number 14 is officially in the history books. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comments section below, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. But as always, guys, thanks.